I'm going to give you guys a heads up that my mic's open because I think yesterday it scared someone and they fell out of their chair because I screamed so loud. But now you guys get the proper heads up. So, good freaking morning, ladies and gentlemen. What's up, traders? What is going on? Welcome back. And happy Money Thursday. What is happening? If you guys feel up to it, open the mics in the Zoom. Shout out a big old good morning. And if you're inside a chat, I need everybody to hit me with a big old good morning as well. Again, welcome back and happy Thursday.
Good morning.
Morning, Catherine.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, Mr. Stir. Mr. Hedgehog. Still love it, dude. I love the username. You got to change it back today. Got to change it back.
What, me?
And then everybody else inside the chat. Good morning. Patrick. Spencer's in the house, ready to rock and roll. Chris, Corey, Catherine again. What's up, Tom? Good morning. Angel. And everybody else, welcome back again. Good morning. Happy Thursday. We're going to dive right into it, talk about what we got going on for today, and take this time to get you guys prepared. So without further ado, dive into it. All right, let's do it. So on the economic calendar for today, we got a couple things coming on up that you have to be mindful of. Here at 9:45, we got S&P Global Composite, Manufacturing and Services PMI Flash. Now that can be a market moving piece of data. Pieces, plural, of data here at 9:45. So be mindful of that. Then we got some home sales data at 10. I'm not too mindful of that. We typically don't see the market react to home sales data, but you got some data at 10 o'clock. Keep it in the back of your mind. Then we do start the whole Jackson Hole Symposium today, which will lead into Mr. Jay Powell giving a nice little speech tomorrow at 10 a.m. So be mindful of that as well, guys. But today, got some S&P Global Composite Manufacturing and Services PMI Flash, and then new home sales data at 10. After that, you, ladies and gentlemen, are in the clear for today. Let's go right into the SPY. Talk about where we're at. What are my expectations for the day? What do I think we could see? And if we do see something set up based on my expectations, how would we look to get involved, right? We do this every single morning. Build those what-if plans, right? Get one step ahead of the market, and we are ready to rock and roll. And that's how we nailed, and I mean nailed, a beautiful, to the penny, gap fill rejection yesterday on the SPY and caught a massive move to the downside. So always, always, always take the time in the morning to get prepared, identify your zones, and then build those what-if plans. Like, what if the market does what you want it to do and it gets to one of your levels? What would you do at that time? How would you get positioned? Where would you put stops? What are your expectations? You could already, think these things through in pre-market before the market opens and be one step ahead. And that's how we were spot on with that one trade yesterday. So let's do it again today. All right. So SPY in the daily. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make one adjustment to the gap. Okay. So I'm just going to make one little tiny adjustment to the gap. We were running it from wick to wick. Okay. Obviously, we went up to the wick yesterday, which was the top end of the gap. We filled it. We got rejected. We had a great short. Okay. Now we're starting to push up above that threshold, right? The entry yesterday was like 562.11. That was the gap fill rejection. Now we're starting to push above that initial gap that was ran off that wick. Okay. So since we've already hit the wick, we saw the rejection, and now we're pushing above that level. I'm simply just going to readjust the top end of my gap from the lower shadow up into the candle body, right? We can see both of those gap fill rejections, right? Sometimes we come up, fill the gap to the penny off the wick, we get rejected, and then we move down. Sometimes we come up, right? We fill the gap off the wick, we get rejected, and then go up into the candle body and do the same thing. Fill the gap into the body, get rejected, and see some downside. So that's where my head is today. Can we get up into the top end of the gap into this candle body, fill it, and also see a rejection off the candle body? It's very possible. We've seen it time and time again. So I'm simply just going to run the top end of my gap up into that candle body. That's going to put you at a 562.84. That's the top end of the gap. Anything above 562.84, the gap's been filled. We're not really looking for the gap fill rejection. We could see more upside. Okay, so if we stay below that 562.84 today, right, I would look for an opportunity to play this short for a possible gap fill rejection off the body. But if we push above that 562.84 and hold that as support, okay, we're not going to see the gap fill rejection. We'll probably go back up into all-time highs. And I will look to play the market long if that's what we see taking place. And so the opportunity to play this long, as far as your target goes, that's going to put you up here around 564.86 to 565.18, right? Is going to be your next area of resistance, which is basically just these all-time highs. Okay, top end of the gap, 562.84. Okay, this is not technically the bottom end of the gap. I'm not really looking at a bottom end of the gap, but I still have a level of support down here at like 559.58, right? So again, I just want to, explain that. Normally, you would think this is the bottom end of the gap, the way that I have it, on the chart, but this is not the bottom end of the gap. So if we come down to this 559.58, we're not looking for a gap fill bounce, but I'm using that level as reference because it is a level of support, right? You have that low a day, you have that high a day rejection. It was also Monday's high a day in close, pretty much where we opened yesterday as well. So that's going to be an area of support to the downside at 559.58. Okay, it is not the bottom end of the gap, but it is a level of support that I want to be mindful of. Okay, so that's at 559.58 is a pretty nice dialed in area of support here on the spot. And then your next lower zone of support below that 559.58 will be back down here, same zone as yesterday, between 556.74 to 557.37. Now, other thing I want to talk about, if your daily candle looks like this, that is not accurate, right? We did not hit a low of day yesterday of 555, right? So again, we could see our low of day yesterday was like 558. The daily candle says we had a low day yesterday of 555. That is incorrect. So that is a misprint candle. That's not correct. Maybe it fixes itself. Maybe it doesn't. But if you see that discrepancy, just know that yesterday's low of day was not down in the 554s. It was at 558. Okay? So just disregard that big lower shadow. It's very deceiving. Very deceiving. So just disregard that big lower shadow. Okay? Tinfoil hat. Yep. Mine's on too. I double layered it this morning. All right, so those are all of your main areas to keep on watch, right? Potential top end of the gap, all-time high resistance, lower level of support, 559.58, and then that lower zone of support as well here on the SPY. All right, let's go ahead and build some plans, okay? Plan number one is going to be, do we see the SPY open? Does the SPY push up to that 562.84 and get rejected? If so, I would be willing to get short here on the SPY. Where to? That level of support down at 559.58. And then if we fall below that level, down into that lower zone between 556.74 to 557.37. Now, are we expecting to take this potential gap fill to rejection straight down to this 559.58? No. I mean, that's a profit target, right? It's a PT level, but there's going to be multiple profit target levels to the downside, right? If we get short, yesterday's high a day being PT1, this little high being PT number 2. Then I expect to see it down into that 559.58 if we fall below those two areas as well. Okay, so you're going to be pretty limited to the downside in my opinion, right? If we do come up and hit that 562.84 and get rejected, your first target will be back into yesterday's high a day. That'll put you at 562. All right, so you got about 80 cents of potential downside into your first target. If you hit second target, that'll give you about a full $1 of potential downside. But if we can get through those two levels, then I do expect that 559.58 to get hit as one of your main profit targets today on the SPY. That's game plan number one for a possible little rejection off that 562.84 here on the SPY today. Now, if we see the SPY hoorah, breaking above that level with some force, pulling back and holding it as support, would I look to play this long? Usually no. But since we have a lot of momentum to the upside and buyers are in control, right, and we can absolutely continue to push to these all-time highs, right, the trend is up, I would be willing on this example, I would be willing to play it long. Typically, I wouldn't, but since we're getting close to all-time highs, we're in a very strong uptrend, and there's clearly no sign of a reversal, I would play this long. So if we break above that 562.84, pull back and hold it as proper intraday support, I would absolutely play the SPY long into those all-time highs. And I have a zone created up against those all-time highs. That's between 564.86 to 565.18. here on the SPY. Those are the two plans that we have for the start of the day. Really just watching the SPY around this 562.84 and see if anything sets up when market opens. Okay? That's really what I'm going to leave you guys with. Just those two plans based on that 562.84, and we will go from there. All right, here with QQQ, what do we got? We got a lot. Not really a fan of the Qs, but we can definitely break this down, all right, and get an idea of where we could go. So I have a pretty significant level, all right, that I'm going to be watching today is my line in the sand. It's a make or break. It's between 482.51 to 482.97, right? Created up against yesterday's close and then Tuesday's high a day. And then if we look left, we see that we have another touch point, another touch point, another touch point, another touch point. I went on a 5-minute time frame and I looked at this candle right here from July 23rd. Then I looked at this candle right here from June 28th and this big green candle right here from July 2nd on a 5-minute time frame to see how we moved around that level intraday, and we moved beautifully around that level intraday. So that validates a few extra intraday touch points off that zone. So that zone really stands out to me, right? That's going to be a key level of support. We're gapping up today, right? We can see that the Qs are going to be gapping up. So if we gap up and we pull back into that zone, that's going to be some initial support, right? We can gap up, come down, close the gap, and then do what? Bounce and see more upside. So if we do see the Qs coming down to this 482.51 to 482.97 zone today, and we hold above it as support, I'm looking to get long here on QQQ, expecting we see some upside. But if we fall below that zone and hold below it as resistance, well, I would expect to see some downside today here on QQQ. And where would I expect to see some downside? I'm going to readjust this lower zone here just a bit. And I'm really just going to run it off of yesterday's low of day, then Tuesday's low of day, and then just run the zone out to the left. And hey, we can see that it has been respected quite a few times as daily support, daily resistance, and it's up against our previous two lows of day. That's a more realistic area to the downside that we could see the Qs get to, right? And so that zone is going to be here between 478.53 to 479.35, okay? And then your next major level of resistance here on the Qs is going to be this zone right here between 486.84 to 487.21, okay? And then if you're wondering, what is this little teeny zone right here between like 484.36 to 484.43? It's just a little zone that I put as a reference point. Not really interested in taking trades off that zone because it's really, really small. You only have 2 touch points, but it's there as a reference. It was yesterday's high a day, and then that candle right here before we had a pretty nice drop that day, followed by the gap down dump, right? It's also that candle's high a day. So I'm using that level as a reference to see how price moves around that level, right? And go from there to see if there's any kind of trades around that level today, okay? But your most significant level overhead is going to be that zone of resistance between 486.84 to 487.21. And your next significant lower zone of support is going to be that line in the sand here between 482.51 to 482.97. So go ahead and build some what-if plans. Pretty simple stuff. If the Qs come down into that line in the sand, we hold it to support. I simply get long. Where to? Our next daily zone of resistance. Simple stuff. Looking to trade from zone to zone. So if we come down to the line in the sand, we hold it as really good intraday support. I'll get long. First target would be yesterday's high a day, right? And if we get through that level and hold it, we could see the continuation move on up into the 487s, which would be our next daily zone of resistance. Then game plan number 2 here on the Qs is going to be if we come down into that line in the sand and we do what? Crack below it. If we follow by a retest and we fail to get back above it, I would expect to see a leg down. Where to? Our next significant daily zone of support. And again, that's down here between 478.53 to 479.35. That will be game plan number 2. And then game plan number 3 is if we never come down to that line in the sand and we just push on up, right? If we come up into that top zone of resistance and we stay below it as resistance and we fail to break through it, I would then be looking to get short up against all that daily resistance here on QQQ, and that zone is 486.84 to 487.21. That is your third and final game plan for today here on QQQ. All right, what else are we going to be looking at today? NVIDIA, just to see what we do. I'm curious. I'm not saying I'm loading the boat, I'm going all in, this is the best setup I've ever seen. No, I'm just curious to see what NVIDIA does inside of this little daily fair value gap. That's it. We've seen some daily fair value gaps get filled before. We've taken those trades. They were wonderful. But also in those trades, we had multiple confluences as well. It wasn't just a daily fair value gap. We had other things on top of that that really backed it up. We really don't have anything else on NVIDIA. So tread lightly. I'm just curious, do we see any kind of opportunity presenting itself inside of this little daily fair value gap? And that little daily fair value gap is right here between 131.93 to 132.42. And why is this a fair value gap? Okay, because we have these three candles right here, this green candle, big red candle, and then that third green candle. What you're really doing is you see you have these three candles right here. The middle candle is a big red candle. And so what you do is you take the first candle low and the third candle high. And if there's a opening between those 2 points, you mark that up with a zone, and that's a fair value gap, okay? Because those 2 points don't overlap. So let's find a quick example of a potential fair value gap that would not be a fair value gap based on how points overlap. So let me try and find a quick example of like a big red candle, and then what would not be considered a fair value gap that could be looked at a potential fair value gap if we even have anything. I don't think there's a lot of really awesome examples in my opinion. But we'll find an example of what you could think would look like a fair value gap, but that's just simply not a fair value gap. And we'll break it down in a little bit more detail today. But again, out of curiosity, I just want to see what NVIDIA does up at this 131.93 to 132.42 level today. Who knows? Maybe we got 132 or 132.50 hedge pressure. You never know. Maybe we have a confluence. And maybe the icing on the cake is we have really, really good price action and an opportunity that suggests there's a strong reason to get short up here off that level. So I just want to keep it on watch to see if NVIDIA gets there today. Watch what happens. And if there's a short presenting itself, let's look for a possible short here on NVIDIA for a little intraday scalp. Maybe back down into these pre-market highs, right? And then maybe back down into yesterday's highs as well. What's up?
Me and Tom were just talking about NVIDIA shorts over an options chat.
What else you seeing?
So Qs are basically at supply right now.
Yep.
NVIDIA is in confirmation needed supply for that reversal. The only thing that's really got me hesitant is all the news we're going to get dropped today, 9:45 at 10, and then tomorrow.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit light size and just hands off at the moment. But we basically saw the same things you did, just need a little bit more confirmation.
Yeah, I'm going to look for some hedge pressures, see what price action looks like up there. And if we can add those confluences to the trade and there's a reason to get short, then let's try and get short on the bad boy. Again, I think we can maybe come back down into Monday's high and close at 130, maybe grab about 250 to the downside out of it. I'd entertain it for sure. So that's worth watching.
Know if we get above 132, I will be looking long. If we hold above 132.
Absolutely. I agree. Yep. So that's NVIDIA. Lastly is going to be Team. I do like this daily chart on Team, and I'll explain why. So we have this big gap, low of day, high day, off the gap down. Okay, I put my gap level right here. We explained this the other day, why I didn't go here with my gap level. I went here because this is the realistic first target that I'd get out at, because that's going to be some resistance overhead. You can see it's just a better area of resistance. You have multiple touch points versus just that low of day prior to the gap down. So the top end of my gap on Team, I'm putting it at 167.21 for those reasons. But what I like about Team is, number one, we got back inside of this gap here on Monday. So we broke the bottom end of the gap. And what have we simply seen the past 2 days? We've seen a pullback where? Into the bottom end of the gap. What have we done? We've held it as proper support. What else are we doing? We're also coming back down into the 20 EMA. Holding the 20 EMA as support as well. And what do you notice about that 20 EMA over the past 3 days? It's starting to curl up, right? And over the last 3 days, what have we also seen? Higher low, higher low, higher low. That 20 EMA is starting to point up, holding as support, and we also have the bottom end of this gap as support as well. This looks like a really nice break, retest that could lead to one more leg on up. Where do I think that leg could go? Right around 165. Why 165 and not the top end of my gap? 165 psychological resistance, and it's right up against your 50 SMA. So I think if we see a proper break retest, which we're seeing, but we can get a break over this Monday high, I do believe we could see a push on up today into that 165 region, which is also your 50 SMA. So I would like to see an intraday break and hold above Monday's high a day for some confirmation intraday to play this long from 159.10 up to 165 on team. Right? The daily stands out to me for those reasons. I like it. Ideally, would have liked to be in Tuesday off the lower end of the gap. I'm not in, so I need more confirmation, and that's going to simply be a break and hold above Monday's high a day as support, and I do believe we could see a daily candle push on up today into the 165s. Okay, so I want to watch this one closely, and again, all we need is a break and hold above 159.10. We get that. I'm going to play it long to 165 today, guys. That's team. All right. And that's all I got for you. Just team. We talked about Boeing yesterday. Nothing's changed. Maybe a gap fill bounce down at 168.52 on Boeing. Nothing's changed from there. We got some decent opportunity today on team. Maybe some short opportunity today on Tesla. Why do I have a bunch of weird freaking dots on my... Just like, these are just some really random dots. And then we got the SPY and the Qs. With some plans today as well, guys. So just tread lightly when the market opens. You may not do a whole lot on the SPY and the Qs, honestly. You got a lot of data at 9:45 and 10 o'clock. So just kind of tread lightly, be smart, wait for the best of the best setups, and let's go from there. But I'm going to put more of my focus on the SPY at the start of the day, simply because the SPY appears to be opening right at that 562.84, and that could provide us with a quick short opportunity right at the start of the day if we can't break the top end of this gap. But if we break that 562.84 and hold it, there could be a quick opportunity to play this long into these all-time highs near 565. So I'm putting most of my focus, ladies and gentlemen, here on the SPY at the start of the day for those reasons. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any stocks you want to look at, we got about 7 minutes to do it. So type yo tickers inside of chat. Let's take a look and see what we got.
I like the team gap fill. I just posted that chart as well. But I posted a bunch of stuff in options this morning. Amazon, Disney, Netflix, AMD, NVIDIA, SPY, Qs, and then team just now.
Yeah, team looks good. Ideally, the entries would have been better at that 155 on Tuesday, but if we get that break over those prior highs and hold it, I think we see a nice little $5, $6 pop on up today.
Oh, 100%. There's nothing in here stopping that from filling.
Nope.
Except for the 50.
Except for the 50. That's why my first main target is going to be 165. That'll be up against the 50 SMA. Second target, 167.21. Top end of the gap we just discussed. And then third final target is going to be that low a day at 170. Just got a few different... I got to take this real quick. Sorry. Whenever I get a phone call like this in the morning, it's urgent. Give me one sec, guys. Do apologize. Hey, just 1 second. Uno momento. Por favor. And what's up? There it is. And boom. We good? Awesome. All right, final questions. I got about a minute and a half till market open. Final questions, let me know. If not, I think we're all set, ready to rock here, guys. All eyes on the SPY when the market opens.